Okay, velkommen alle, welcome. Paradoxically, this debate is going to take place in English, which is becoming the common language of Europe, or rather, as I prefer to call it, Globish. And it should have been, of course, in German or in Norwegian, but it's going to be in Globish. It's a debate which we're going to have for the next 3/4 of an hour, which is about isn't it 3/4 of an hour? It says here.
Yes, it does.
Yes, it says, doesn't it? It is 3/4 of an hour. This is the second debate I'm moderating today, so and then I'm going to do something else later. But anyway. The reason for this debate is that this is a festival of literature between German language literature and Norwegian literature, and we thought that in a situation like this it would be pertinent to have a discussion about literary policies in the German-speaking countries and in Norway and in Europe in general, and that's what we are going to do now. And particularly as this year Norway is going to be the guest of honor at the Frankfurt Book Fair, and we thought that we were going to reciprocate by inviting German language literature to Oslo. So that is the background to that we are all here. And of course, the literary system, and maybe we shouldn't call it a system because it's kind of an ecological system rather than a system as such. Our books and literature is something that we discuss all the time, those of us who are related to the publishing, the writing world. And to discuss this today, we have 5 people, including myself. And those are Simone Stibe, who is originally German, but runs a nynorsk forlag in Norway, a small one, but an excellent one. And then we have Mats Nygaard, who is the director of Asker, one of the major Norwegian publishing houses. Then we have Kerstin Gleba, who is the director of Kippenheuer und Witsch, which is a major German publishing house. And then we have Tore Slotta, and here comes the commercial, who together with myself have written a book on the the tools of the Norwegian literary policies. So tools of literary politics is also the theme of this discussion. And he will then comment a bit about the situation. And then finally we have Thomas Bøhn, who is a literary critic, a literary consultant, and one of the real consultants behind the Norwegian participation in Frankfurt this year. So I thought we were going to do it this way, that first the 3 publishers tell a bit about how they view the situation for literary policies and what are the challenges. And then Tore will make some comments on that, and then finally Thomas Bøhn will make some comments, and then we'll have a discussion between ourselves. And if some of you would like to chip in, I'm certain we can manage that as well. So we have 3/4 of an hour, and please, Simone.
Is it on? Yeah. Okay. The challenges of literacy policy in Norway. Well, Norway is compared to Germany a very small country, including 2 major languages, Norwegian languages, bokmål and nynorsk. And I guess. You know that I'm representing nynorsk, and nynorsk is quite a small official language in Norway, and that makes publishing, of course, quite challenging because it's not really commercial to publish in nynorsk. So to do that, we depend on the Norwegian Cultural Council, which is a great institution in Norway. I guess we will hear a bit more about that. and what do you call them in English? Inköpsordning, which I think the purchase scheme. Thank you. Which are very important, I think, to secure the big selection of different titles and books every year. I think we have about 70,000 titles a year or something like that. So that's quite a lot for a small country. So I think Norway has a quite a very good cultural policy on literature, but we also have the challenges from the commercial focus, of course, and the challenges of that this big country has just 5 million inhabitants, and they are spread all over the place. And of course, a bookseller in a small place with like 3,000 inhabitants can't really survive on just selling books. So that's a big challenge, and to keep the coverage of booksellers all over the country, I think, is a big challenge in Norway. Yeah, now I'm very general, but I think I just...
What are your challenges as a very small publisher in a minority language?
Yeah, to us it's the big challenge regarding the booksellers is that we publish in nynorsk, Norwegian, which is mainly used in the western part of Norway as a written language, and the booksellers are turning more and more into they buy the books like central for all the book stores all over the country, and it's obvious that it's maybe not so interesting for somebody at the Nordkapp to read a new Norwegian book. Maybe should be, of course, but that's kind of challenging for us. So we need to kind of operate in our niche and have to focus on that we deliver what's actually lacking in a new Norwegian market. So that's what we're trying as a small publisher. So we are not trying to compete with big publishing houses. We don't have a chance. So it's the niche which is our way to go, and I think the only way to survive. And then of course it's always when you are small, then you have challenges to be seen, of course. So we have to think different. We don't have the economical power to announce in a way as a big publishing house would have. So we need to find different ways to connect to our readers.
Okay, thank you. I'm certainly will come back to this, particularly how you distribute your books, when you said that it was difficult to get them into the bookstores.
We have of course we have a database and we have the structure, and we are connected to that. So every bookseller in the whole country can order our books, but we need to communicate directly with our readers. That's very important, so that they go to the bookstores and actually ask for our books. That's quite important. But we, I mean, you have seen our books, so obviously people have discovered the publishing house, which is 25 years old. So yeah, we have tried some years.
Okay. Yes, Mats, you are not a small publishing house.
Well, I wouldn't mind being bigger, actually, if that's what you're asking me about. But on the question, what is it like to be a publisher in Norway? On a question like that, I think the most accurate answer would be that it's really, really inspiring. Living as a publisher in Norway is actually a good position to work from, and the reason is that Norwegian literature and books writers do very well, both in Norway and all over the world, which I find extremely, extremely inspiring. And the reason is, amongst other things, connected to what you just mentioned. I think the reason is that the quality of Norwegian literature is based on a well thought through, well tested and well functioning literary system, which is applied over years, and it's working very well. And I think the proof is in the quality we can see in Norwegian literature, and the demand for the books all over the world, for example in Germany. Within Norway, the consequence is that there are a lot of Norwegian small publishers, and big ones as well. There's a lot of Norwegian writers and authors. There's a lot of bookshops, and there are a lot of readers. And I think that makes it all quite inspiring.
Okay, we have heard two very optimistic talks now. Kerstin, is it as good in Germany?
I'm sorry to disappoint you, but I'm taking it over from Mats and Simone, and I'm optimistic, and actually we wouldn't be doing what we are doing if we're not optimistic that we can find readers for the wonderful books that are being written. And so for Germany, my name is Kerstin. I work at Kiepenheuer and Witsch, which might mean nothing to you here in the audience. We are a publishing house based in Cologne, publish 100 or 120 books a year. Our profile is like high upmarket literary fiction, big name authors. We try to put forth and make prominent young literary talents. We have a list of serious non-fiction books, political and social politics, cultural history, and we have a line of books that are more on the commercial side of things. And the publishing house is doing fine, as are, to my great happiness, many publishing houses in Germany. So, of course, there are challenges, and I will mention them, and dangers, and there are things happening in the market which ask for new answers and for new approaches to publishing. But basically, I'd say that the range of books that are being published in Germany is versatile and is of highest qualities, and there are a couple of reasons why this is so. First of all, I would like to mention there are 6,000 bookshops in Germany still operating, and this is an opportunity to show and to present your books. And I can't mention this without mentioning it, that the number is shrinking. Like, of course, this is one of the challenges we face, that the biggest book chain, Thalia, it's called in Germany, is buying many bookshops that used to be independent, and quite a few, too many for my taste, quite a few independent bookshops can't find, when they retire, can't find new people to buy their bookshops, so they are closing down. And traditionally, those are the booksellers who are particularly good in promoting and finding readers for upmarket literary fiction and serious non-fiction. We're not so much worried about the commercial side of things, but I think that's something we can agree on very quickly. But still, the booksellers are quite engaged and willing to follow us in our argumentation when we try to build a new author. So that's one thing. Then the fixed book price, of course, is an instrument that is not only good for the diversity of books a publishing house publishes, but very much so, even more so, I'd say, for the shop structure in Germany. And third thing why I'm very confident about book publishing is like the media in Germany. They face new challenges. Like there are a couple of colleagues here from the German press, and having lived in the Netherlands and knowing how the media work in America, I'm not so sure about Norway. Something that's really important for us is there's a wide diversity in the newspapers and an eye for literature, for culture, like the literary supplements or cultural sections of the newspapers. They traditionally they have been they have a high profile. They and the quality of reflection on literature is unmatched, I find, in other countries. Of course, also these cultural sections face challenges, like we know that the print run of the newspapers is going down, so they need to find new business models how to build it. But that's something that, or a field where we can enter into a discussion with the audience and public about new books. And so this is good. Challenges we have are more, as I say, we need to approach the changes, like there's a media shift, so we try to talk more to the consumers, not only to the booksellers, and we find new ways how to do that and to approach that. A different challenge is like you see you have a very good ecosystem functioning. Like, I don't know if it's the same in Norway. Yeah, like basically as a reader you can go to your bookshops, and if the book isn't in the bookshop, you can order it and you get it the next day, the very next day. And to ensure that, you need wholesalers who do that. And in the beginning of this year, one of the big wholesalers went bankrupt, or said like he's going to be bankrupt. And all of a sudden you see how dangerous it is for the whole book system. So these are challenges we face, and but also you saw that all publishing houses, who of course are in danger of losing money when this wholesaler goes bankrupt, they kind of stand together and try to make sure that this ecosystem survives. Sorry. So I think that it's for now long enough.
Before we continue, and before I pass the word to Tore Slotta, what I understand from what you are saying is the microphone. It's a system that functions, but it's still fragile. And I read recently that in Germany you had lost 6 million book buyers.
Readers. It's something that a discussion that has been going on for a couple of months in Germany, and it's true. Like the book market is stable. Like I think it lost like 0.4% last year, and it's stable only because the book prices have gone up. So basically, it's true. There are less readers, but the readers who are there are willing to pay more or to spend more money on books. So of course it's not a situation you can relax in and say everything is fine. But I think that to find new readers and to approach them in a new way without leaving out all the traditional ways we had to approach them, I'm very confident that we can find new readers among younger people, for instance, who we see are interested in politics very much, and we need to find different ways. But I think the study, I was happy to have it, because we didn't have a lot of research on readers in Germany, but also it kind of directed the discussion into an apocalyptic scenario, which I don't fully agree with.
Okay. Tore, what are your comments to these optimistic perspectives?
Well, I think they are very interesting. I've been to several discussions on the situation for the industry and the challenges for literary policies and so on. And they usually are more, more nervous, more talking about the problems. We are talking about challenges, which sounds good. But the interesting thing is that the book industry, compared to other media industries, has been surprisingly stable and surprisingly also separated from other media industries. There's been a historical change. There was many buyouts and takeovers in the 70s and 80s. And at the moment, it seems to be a much more stable situation. So it seems to be a calmer situation. The national markets in Europe are, more stabilized, more secure maybe than they used to be 10 years ago. And this is a little bit puzzling, because you would perhaps believe that the digitalization, the problem with, the challenge with digital media would turn the book industry into a more general media industry. And I think it still hasn't. And it's still a lot of scope for maneuver in this trade, in this business. And that's why we also think it's interesting to talk about literary politics as a very important part of cultural politics. Because politicians seems to be, more taken by the future of digitalization, go forward, the nation must be in front, and blah, 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 and so on. And then politicians may not necessarily think that the print book should have protection or should have a cultural value today, since it's not speeding up digitalization. And may I introduce a question, Helge?
Yes, you may.
Okay,
That's why you're here.
Thank you. So I would ask you whether because I heard you say the importance of booksellers, and to me that is also the physical booksellers, and then it's actually about print. So is it true, as I propose then, that it's firmly it's fairly stable at the moment, and that print is still the future for the book industry?
Yes, Kerstin?
I'd say, we've seen in the past years that the percentage of digital sales doesn't rise. It's stable between 10 and 15%, and commercial books tend to be read in a higher percentage digitally. Serious literary fiction and non-fiction tends to be bought as a print book. And the strategy we apply, and many publishers apply, is an even stronger focus on the beauty of the printed book. As I said, the book prices have risen a bit, and of course, as a publisher, you're quite cautious. Will people still buy it when it's a bit more expensive? But at the same time, we find that the haptic quality of a book, and the also in a time when everybody is streaming and nobody wants to possess any cultural entities any longer, people still want to own and touch and have a book, so I'm quite happy about the fact that the industry managed to have a fixed book price too for e-books. It was in 2016 that it was turned into a law, so I see the digital editions as an extra or a second way of finding readers, which is fine, but it's not a danger at all for the printed book, I'd say.
Thomas, what are your comments to this? And you have actually seen a bit of Norwegian book system as well as being very much part of the
yes, and I find it always ever so
inspiring being on both sides, you know. And as I know that there are some German journalists in the audience, and as if you have been pointing at the measures in the Norwegian literary system, I may describe two of them, and please correct me if I, out of enthusiasm, describe them wrong. One thing to secure the publishing industry is that the Norwegian state invites all the publishing houses to hand in the books which are in production, and then they have a jury judging which of these books are going to be bought for the libraries nationwide. And I think the books chosen, they buy 800 copies. It used to be 10,000 and then 800 copies. So this more or less secures what we call die Deckungsauflage. And it's important, as I said, it's the books in production. It's not a means of censorship. So the books which would have come out anyway are supported by that way. The other thing is scholarships for authors. You can get a scholarship by the state for up to 10 years. Here the idea of emancipation and support combines, you know, so that women can plan their career, being a mother and so on, and not decide whether to become a writer or whether to be keep for the family. And as we're talking about emancipation, also men can get this scholarship. And on the other hand, we have, as you were talking about, what we call, with a wonderful term, bibliodiversity, and to protect the structures of the independent market. We have a wonderful commissioner in Germany, Monika Grütters, the commissioner. As we don't have a minister of culture, we have a commissioner, a federal commissioner. She's very close to literature, and she has introduced two very strong means. One is an award for independent bookshops, who get 100 bookshops each year are picked. They get an award. It is not a support because this is not possible under EU regulation. They get an award, 7,000 euros, and 7,000 euros for an independent bookshop is a lot. You know, you can run a reading program and so on to promote your bookshop. And the other thing which is going to be introduced in 2019 is an award for independent publishers, who will get 60 publishing houses will be picked, independent publishing houses, up to an amount of yearly turnover 3 million euros. They will get 15,000 euros award. So, and this is what I find when we are talking about the panorama, the challenges, and so on, that there are some concrete ideas, concrete projects, that the situation has been realized also on the side of the politics, well thought in Norway, ongoing in Germany, that sometimes simple ideas can change the system. And I like to promote one idea to show it's the most simple one, but I'm trying to promote it whenever I'm on a panel. It is in Iceland, the bookshops are the only shops in the inner cities who are allowed to be opened till 10 o'clock in the evening, which is ever so important for the cities themselves, because then something is going on in the city. You know, and if you go to Berlin, there is one bookshop, Dussmann, who is always well visited at the late times of the day. And what it means for it kind of highlights the importance for bookshops in a city. So think about having all the Norwegian and the German bookshops open till 10 in the evening, those who want, in the cities. Would make a change even to the structure of the city, and would give the bookshops an advantage.
Yes. By the way, your way of describing the Norwegian purchase system isn't accurate.
It's not.
No, it's not accurate.
No, sorry.
I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, for sure.
It's actually about 760 copies, isn't it now? Pardon? 770 copies, and they are only belles lettres. They are not, non-fiction books. They are not the general market books. There are special purchasing schemes which are not automatic, And that, of course, means that if you talk about this as a book industry, it's related to a certain form of literature. It's not related to all forms of literature. And to those of us who do not write fiction or poetry or drama, we feel that maybe this is a bit unfair. And this is a certain part of this. The book policy in Norway is also a policy of arts rather than a policy of books to quite some degree. And this is also something that maybe we should look upon when you talk about cultural policies, because Tore, maybe you could say a bit about this, that cultural policies and literary policies should also be about knowledge and not only about art. It's not only culture in the form of art. It's a broad concept of what's literature, which we should pursue.
Well, I certainly could continue on that. I think in our book we are starting with the values that are behind every thinking about literary politics, and it's the core is of course a freedom of speech and the plurality of the public sphere. So you actually have regulation, particularly in law, to regulate freedom of speech. But there's also a very important cultural value connected to language. And I think Simon was mentioning the 2 languages of Norway. Of course, that is a strong cultural value to secure those languages, as would be with the German language, of course. So literary politics are in a way secured by these values or anchored in them. And if you see it from that point of view, you can't separate art literature or fiction literature from other parts of literature. So what Helge was saying is, remember that science, academia, school books, textbooks, that is also part of literature, and it's a very important form of written language. So literary politics has to preserve also academic literature and school textbooks and so on. So in many ways, I think in our book it's maybe not on the level of Game of Thrones, but there is a war going on, and there's a battle between audiovisual media and textual media. And I would say audiovisual media have gained some terrain. So if cultural policies is not preserving written language, then things are going to change more rapidly.
I would also like to ask Mats and Kerstin about a question which has to do with the structure of the book, of the publishing industry in the 2 countries, in Germany and in Norway. In Norway, the big publishing houses are integrated publishing houses in the form that they also do publish textbooks for schools, and they publish also academic books, and they are sort of an integrated system as such. While in Germany, the tendency is that textbooks and educational books are being published by special publishing houses. They're not integrated in the publishing houses like yours. So what are the disadvantages and advantages of having such a difference between the way that the publishing industry is being run?
Well, to begin with, I would disagree a little bit with you on your statement that we are vertically integrated. We have
I said horizontally.
You said horizontally. Because we are. Well, anyway, within the Norwegian book industry, there are a lot of vertical ownership, but there's less vertical integration, which is a difference. For example, in the bookshop, the chain of booksellers that Aschehoug owns parts of, they sell books from everybody.
Yeah, but my point was not that.
Yeah.
We can return to
Right.
the kind of vertical system. But your publishing house, Aschehoug, you have a division for academic books, Universitetsforlaget. You have a division for textbooks for schools. You have a division for other forms of knowledge material. And you have a division for novels, Norwegian literature, etc. So you're a kind of a horizontally integrated company, while in Germany you wouldn't publish textbooks.
Actually, I'm very curious to hear the answer, because I know about the different system here in Norway, and I must confess I can't imagine being a publisher for all these sorts of books.
Exactly.
So I can tell you what what our profile is, but I'm curious to hear the answer.
Because in Germany, I've been studying this together with Tore. The textbooks publishers and the academic book publishers, particularly when it comes to science, technology, and medicine, etc., they are separate publishing houses. They're not horizontally integrated as they are in Norway. And what are the advantages and disadvantages of having these two systems? So we can go back to the vertical aspect later, Mats, but now we talk about the horizontal aspect.
Yes. Mind you, again, I mean, there's a lot of specialized publishers, of course, in Norway as well. Most publishers, I guess, are that. The advantage, of course, is the economies of scale, the possibility of share costs over broader width of published books, the knowledge, the people working within the company share some sort of knowledge about being a publisher. And the sheer fact that, or the fact that Norway is a small country, meaning the markets for any kind of book is fairly small, meaning that growth necessarily has to come from other kinds of books if you want to grow at some point. The disadvantage is that the trades are fairly different. I mean, it's a big difference between being a literary fiction publisher and do educational books. Also, there are similarities, but mostly differences. Meaning, there is a challenge connected to the fact that, or to be able to share knowledge and use people effectively across the company and share whatever knowledge you might have.
Kerstin?
As I said, like for me, it's thinking out of the box, imagining what the advantages would be if we would also publish textbooks and do academic books. And I do see the advantages in terms of economical scale, but my point of our point of view and starting point is a totally different one. Like as I said, we publish 100 books a year, and for us it feels like every book is handcrafted. It's not only an original work of art or a text by a writer who we help to make the book even better, and all the kind of steps it takes to bring it to the reader, and this is a challenge. This is the fun of the job, I'd say, and what's inspiring that every year you kind of start from scratch, like finding new readers for the new book you're publishing, and so a lot of imagination goes into how can we address the reader and find him or her, and thinking about like not only if we have a novel which we think might appeal particularly to people around the age of 30, like to approach a group of people, for instance, teachers, for your new textbook for Norwegian language lessons in Germany. It's a totally different approach, and so for me, it's something I haven't thought about. And actually, I'd say I'd be wrong in the job if I had to do it.
Okay.
I couldn't do it.
Simone?
I do it, actually. So we have like 15 titles a year, and I think a third of it is maybe fiction, and the rest is non-fiction. But we also have to distinguish between educational publishing, which is norm in the big publishing house, also a own little business in a way, which is functioning completely different, and non-fiction books. But actually, with non-fiction books, you have the same challenges. You have to find a reader who is interested in trees or Norwegian barns, or so you have to find the readers in a way. So you work. It's quite similar actually, but what is challenging is actually the media, because on the fiction you have those critics, and it's the same people doing it. So you can kind of continue, and you can build up a relationship. On non-fiction, of course, there are some doing general non-fiction, but you need to find a special person who is competent to write about a special topic. I think this is quite difficult.
In terms of textbooks for schools, do you need the media to?
No, I'm educational publishing.
Okay, education.
I exclude here.
I was when we were
about
talking about textbooks. I was talking about textbooks like educational publishing textbooks for students.
Mats, you publish a lot of educational material.
Yeah, yes, we do, and it's I mean, okay, they are based in our building. There are our colleagues with people working with literature fiction. There are advantages connected with that, but of course the markets are completely separate, and the trade itself, the method of succeeding is, I mean, not to be compared at all. They are more different than similar altogether. But I was thinking, when we talk about policies and we talk about you know, how every book is handcrafted, just like you mentioned, which I think is the sort of basis for high quality literature in any country. What distincts both Germany and Norway is the ability for publishers to do exactly that. In many countries, the publisher has stopped doing that. It's the agents who are editing books, and the policies don't allow the publisher to the same extent to do that, meaning the policies are extremely important to define what the publisher you know, basically is.
Well, I don't know, Tore, whether you would like to comment upon that, because one of the observations that we have made in our research is that in Norway you don't have agents for Norwegian literature in Norway. Norwegian authors have agents when they sell outside Norway, but not inside Norway, and that has to do with something which is a very particular part of the Norwegian literary system, and that is the standard contract between writers' unions and the publishers' union.
Well, I think you said it mostly. That's true. I think the present stability in the Norwegian system is based on, or maybe not based on, but it has that element that agents are not part of the system, part of the circuit. Because as an author you would expect to get the standard royalty, and the purchase scheme is so important, and there's a kind of a solidarity pact among the authors, I would say, that you'll give a chance to other authors to get the same advantage as you had as a first book writer maybe, and then so the bestsellers don't really take their benefits as they could have done if they had agents. So I think that's a very important difference. I don't know how agents are working in Germany.
Yeah,
Yes?
yeah, I answer that first. So there are literary agents, but they only came into play like in the 90s. And what's different from agents in Germany than from agents in the UK or the US is that they help the author find the right publisher. And we also have standard royalties, kind of. There's a scale, and you can negotiate, but basically the same. But the literary agent helps the author to find the right publishing house, and What's something we compete with at is the advance, of course, like what you as a publisher think you can sell from a book. And so the literary agent mostly would try to find the publisher who is willing to pay the highest advance and go into risk. But sometimes that's not what's happening. Even an author might choose to go with a publisher whose profile is more appealing to him or her than for the highest advanced. So, but basically the literary agents don't do any editorial work. Like they shape it until the time they show it to a publisher. And from what I can say from our authors is like they feel they have a good consultant, but they never not with the Kiwi authors, they never go into editorial work with the agents. That's done with the editors at Kiwi.
Both Simone and Kerstin mentioned the importance of the fixed book. In Germany, it's a book law. In Norway, it's an agreement between the booksellers and the publishers. Personally, I am very much more in favor of a law than in this sort of agreement. And I've argued for a law. But I understand now, I don't know, I've been reading that there is quite a lot of discussion in Germany about whether the Buchgesetz shall continue or not, and it's been challenged by politicians. Is this true?
Yeah. You want to start it?
You can start, and then Thomas
I think a year ago there was a commission being the government asked this commission to look into the fixed book price agreement, and this was a monopol commission, it was called, and they looked at the fixed book price only from an economic perspective. So they told the government that they would recommend to step out of the law or to change the law. So because it was a neoliberal position, like you people should be able to buy the book at the have the competition in the market and at the cheapest price they can get, and so this was the recommendation of the commission. But luckily the government was smarter and said like this commission didn't take into account the cultural value of books and of the written word, and so I think it was in December last year that they reinforced. It was like also the conservative SPD and CDU, both parties reinforced their belief and their conviction that the fixed books price is a very a good and strong and valuable instrument to protect cultural diversity in Germany.
And of course, it has a lot to do I mean, in the EU, I mean, they accept book laws, but they are very skeptical of these agreements, which they call cartels. So, because book laws are seen as culture policy, and that, of course, dates back to the loi langue in France. So this is part of it. But another aspect of the Norwegian book policy, which was introduced as part of the early elements of this new modern book policy that we have in Norway, is that there is no VAT on books. Which is
it's a reduced VAT in Germany,
yeah.
And now what's new, it's like it used to be for printed books 7%, and for the digital editions you had the 19% like the usual VAT, and they changed it too. So both are protected, but not just like kind of protected or supported by having this reduced VAT. But I read it that in Norway you have none, which is
incidentally
nice
also the case in a free price country like the UK. Mm-hmm. Thomas, do you have a comment to this?
No, I'm gladly listening and learning here from the colleagues.
Okay, but Mats wanted to say something.
I have a question, because the challenges or the way the book law in Germany has been challenged. I mean, it's very similar to the way the system has been challenged in Norway. The same arguments are being produced, the same very economic perspective, without regards for any other things than arguments that are based on economic terms alone, are being put forward. Could you describe a future where the book law disappeared, where the market was liberated? What would be the consequences for German publishers? How would that be?
Actually, because this law has been challenged so often, people think about it all the time, and there are different beliefs in what will be happening. And the common fear, and a fear I share, is that, of course, like looking at England, a few bestsellers will be available everywhere, in the supermarket and everywhere, and these tend to be more commercial books, not literary fiction, which I'm very passionate about. I also love commercial fiction, but my heart goes out for literary fiction, and being a publisher who tried to find an audience, a broad audience for true literary voices, the challenges would be great. I think we would, in the long run, we would be challenged to publish less literary books and focus more on commercial books. I think that many bookshops wouldn't survive, like the bookshops that are now protected by the fixed book price law. Because they can compete with the supermarket, because the book is as expensive at a little independent bookshop as it is at the big book chains or Amazon. And we haven't talked about the big player in Europe. No, I think it will come later. And so it would have an impact on the diversity of cultural production in Germany, I'd say.
But because I think that's very interesting to hear, and my belief is that the same thing would happen in Norway. I think the consequences would be very negative, and maybe even worse in Norway, because I mean Germany is 10 times and more larger than Norway is, and the consequences of no regulations, just markets would be devastating, I think, to many parts of Norwegian literature, many parts of Norwegian publishers, and for sure the loser would be the writer and the reader.
Simone?
Yeah, I think we really need it in Norway, and we need this law very, very fast now, because Amazon is knocking on our door. And at the moment, I think the Norwegian booksellers, they have a kind of understanding that they use the fixed book prices even on the publishers who are not in the union, publishers union. We are not in the publishers union. It's different reasons, but
Why not?
well, I can explain that as well.
Yes, please.
I know, I've heard it before. The problem is actually the booksellers have too much power in this agreement for us, because there are kind of subscription agreements between the publishers and the booksellers, which give the booksellers a first copy for 70%. Most of the booksellers in Norway just buy this one copy. For us, it would mean a minus on that copy, because we use a little bit the big distribution channels, but we have also our own distribution, and it's too expensive to send one book. That's the reason, actually, because so we can't join you, but we really would like. so that's an easy. But there are other publishers which have different reasons why they are not in this union, and one reason could be at the free price. there are commercial publishers, the few commercial publishers, and I think as soon as we get booksellers like Amazon, which probably don't care about what was tradition in Norway before, they would press the prices on the publisher on the books from the publishers which are not part of the union, and that's why we need a law for everybody. Yeah.
This is what they are doing even under fixed price conditions. You know, in Germany, you know, I'm running a little publishing house myself, and when we published our first program, we pronounced proudly we don't deal with Amazon. But I know from the colleagues that Amazon demands very good conditions for them, conditions you don't get as a small bookshop, for example. And the book chains also get better conditions than small bookshops, for sure.
Well, that was the issue I was going to return to in relation to this, because in Germany there are huge book chains, which are, and as you said, they are buying up also smaller independent bookshops and turning them into part of a chain. In Norway we also have major book chains, very few independent bookstores, and now you challenge that particular system, that you're saying that the book chains have too much power in relation to your interest as a small minority language publisher. So what is the role of these book chains, and what is the role of these book chains in relation to the promotion of a wide variety of literature, to a wide variety of a public that is interested in minority books?
Of course, it's a competition. They want a higher margin. That's true. The biggest book chain in Germany, which is about to merge with a different book chain,
I have read about that.
Is that their background is still being a bookseller. So basically, if you talk to these people, you can talk about books, and then you have very ugly talks about conditions. That's true. And they want a lot of money to promote the books in their bookshop. And what's also true is they tend to focus on fewer books. Just like having a lean assortment in their bookshops and having a fast turnover. So the tendency is not to present as many books as we would love them to present, like all of our list, or from competitors as well. But the advantage is you can still talk to them. You don't always get what you want, but you can talk to them. With Amazon, as if I may take the liberty of saying so, you don't talk to people, you talk to algorithms. Like even if you, it's basically speaking, it's tough to get a phone call or to get somebody on the phone at Amazon who you actually can talk to, but you manage, you need to schedule it and things. And then this person might have run the washing machine section like a month ago and now is responsible for books. And so it's like you're not talking to somebody who has a different approach to books than to other gadgets they are selling. And so it's a completely different talk. And what the big book chain I'm talking about, Thalia, has done, and which is a good thing, is like in the past they managed, I think as one of the only book chains in Europe, to build up a competition towards Amazon in terms of digital publishing. Like they, Thalia, and asked a couple of other booksellers to join forces to create a different ecosystem, which is not Kindle, but an open system. It's called Tolino, where you can buy digital editions of the books and read it on different gadgets, reading devices. And that is something that is good, that there's a competition in digital publishing towards Amazon. And as I said, like there are challenges, of course, like with the because they use their power, the big book chains, as you said, to kind of bring in their demands in what the conditions will be like.
There is one thing that puzzles me about the German system. In the Börsenverein, both booksellers and publishers are members. That's puzzling to me.
That's a good thing. It's a good thing. You know, we basically we all want the books to find readers.
Would you be have booksellers in the publishers union, Mathis?
Well, I think there could be argued that it's a good idea. Certainly, in many.
Even if you're in the same house, I mean, they're still separate.
Yes, that's true. No, in many ways, when it comes to policy making, obviously, we share, views and goals altogether. And in that perspective, I would say it's a very good thing to have a shared organization and work towards together towards the same goals. Having said that, there are obviously also advantages with separate organizations. To some extent, publishers have unique problems, unique goals, and booksellers as well. So I guess both systems have advantages.
Simone?
I actually didn't want to comment on that.
No.
But I have a question, because when I lived in Germany, it's a couple of years ago, but I got the impression that there was a kind of ethical standard, or a kind of I don't remember what was the formulation, but the contract between the booksellers and the publishers were that the booksellers have to secure expertise about literature actually in the bookstores. I don't think this is a point in our agreement, which we have today, and that's maybe also one thing. I think that the booksellers have a lot of power, but the publishers' union hasn't demand enough back. Of course, we publishers think that, but is it still like that?
It's more like you're talking about a partnership, like in terms of values and between publishers and, I'd say, independent booksellers, or like when you talk, for instance, there are a couple of regional booksellers who have 10 bookshops, and they still operate as if they are independent booksellers. But the pressure to focus more on commercial books is existing. So it's I can't paint a black and white picture, like the chains are only have an eye for commercial books and margins, and the independent only promote quality. They need to pay their rents too, and pay their staff. But I'd say, like, because we're sitting in the same boat, I'd say, like, there's an endeavor and the wish to conserve this ecosystem. But
are there any demands to be a member of the booksellers section in the Börsenverein? Are there the demands like that? I don't know, a percentage of the employees needs to have an education or something like that?
No, but I would think any reasonable bookseller would know that you need the expertise, because that is the difference to for your customers to buy at Amazon. You know, they come to your bookshop, and a lot of customers think about, I come to the bookshop. If I don't know what to read, then I can ask my bookseller, could you recommend something to me? And this personal relation, you know, which have been building up over years. That's Kerstin. She likes this kind of literature. I have something for you. They may even address her before asking, you know. Here, nice to see you. I read this book. I think there's something for you. The expertise is what is called the unique point of sale, probably. Yeah.
but just as long as you have a fixed price. So that's the floor we're talking from. And I think
Absolutely,
that's,
absolutely. It's all part of this.
Which an observation here would be that, in fact, Norway and Germany is peculiarly alike when it comes to the way the policies are working and the way the stability in the market are preserved. And it seems to, at the moment, in both countries, to be a focus on the plurality or the multitude of booksellers. And I think that seems to be working, but very important then to remember it works because you have a fixed price system.
May I add one? Yeah,
just
sorry.
one other comment, because I think the discussion about the booksellers being cooperative or not with the publishers has also to do with the difference between a book law and a book agreement. Because if you have to negotiate every second year for a book agreement, then all differences between the booksellers and the book publishers will come up every second year. If you have a book law, that will be a stabilizing point.
Yeah. Yes, Simone?
You first.
No, I was just going to say that the other advantage of the book law is, of course, that it's also all-encompassing, that it also covers all those who publish and sell books. So then you will have to follow it, even if you're not a member.
Yes. Yeah. Another thing which is interesting, we just touched into it, with, the challenges with the e-books or digital publishing, and the printed books, and that also comes back to the fixed prices actually, because if we would have a free price, it also would push the prices on the printed books. But if the only way is to actually secure the book craft in publishing with the printed books, so you have you feel you have a really lasting book in your hand that is not going to fall apart next year. You need to put some money in the production, and you need to thread to your books and not just glue them. And of course, if the prices on the printed books are, if there is a bigger pressure, even bigger pressure, then that would have an effect on the printed, on the quality of the printed books. And we have also to. I would also like to mention that the book prices in Norway actually have been stable, which is of course nice for the customer, but it also the margins the booksellers demand from the publishers, they have grown a lot. So there is a challenge.
This is an absolutely good point, because when Tore and I were working on our book, we talked to a publisher, and he showed us how the margins had been going down for Norwegian publishers from 1971 till 2016. If you looked at the price increase in general goods and in relation to the price increase in books, books now would have to cost 100 kroner more on average than it does if you had the same, which means that actually your margins have been going down dramatically. And this is to me something that is also part of the discussion that we really should have about what is happening in the literary ecosystem as such, when it comes to the possibility of actually maintaining it also based on a sound economic footing. And part of what Tore and I have been emphasizing in our book is that the Norwegian system is a very peculiar but also very sensitive system and sensible, because it's kind of the tripartite system that we have also in negotiations over trade agreements, etc. in Norway, because it consists of a state that provides the infrastructure, not least in the form of no VAT on books, libraries, all those elements that are part of the state provisions for book policy. And then there are independent and private interests, business interests in the form of publishers and booksellers that actually use this infrastructure to their benefit and make the goods available. And then, of course, we have the organizations, namely the organizations of writers and other rights holders. And that is a very important ecological system of communication, of negotiation, of using the three elements of this system. And that brings me to the last part of this. What is the role of writers? How do you treat your writers as publishers? Not only economically, that's a very important part of it, obviously, but at least in Norway, the income of writers have gone down the same way that you can see the margins of the publishing industry has been going down. What's the situation in Germany?
And I also saw a survey of English writers where a writer, I forgot who it was, said like he was a best-selling author and could live on it and can't do it any longer. I'd say I don't have any research results on this. My gut feeling would say like it hasn't changed so much, like because we also have the standard royalties and we have the fixed book prices, which haven't. One thing is true, like the book prices haven't risen in the to the extent that general living costs have risen. So, and as I said some time ago, is book prices are higher now, and it's booksellers who encourage us as a publisher to raise them even more, because they say like people are willing to pay it, and you know our rents are going up and things and living costs. So they have risen, but the percentage you as a writer get is still the same. What's true and which makes me sad, but which is a reality, that as a truly literary writer, when you just from all sensible thinking, when you, for instance, could expect to sell 50,000 copies in the 90s, it's 20,000 now, and so that's a drop in his earnings or her earnings. That's true. Sometimes you can compensate it in selling sub-rights, or like film rights are more important, audiobook rights are more important, so you have some compensation. Yeah, that's my gut feeling.
Thank you so much. I'm afraid we have to end this very interesting discussion now. And the reason for that is that the program of this festival is extremely full. And when we in the organizing committee made it, we tried to slot everything into everything. And in 15 minutes in this room, there will be another debate going on, which is called "What is the point of book fairs?" So you're all welcome in 15 minutes to discuss that. And maybe we can find out whether it's because publishers and writers like to get together and drink, or whether there is some real serious business going on in Frankfurt and elsewhere. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I have some gifts for you.